Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We are here today for our Tier 1 coaching series. This is number 3 of 3. And we have Lauren from Florida PBIS who's going to be presenting today, and Sabrina from Florida PBIS. So thank you very much. If you take a note in the chat, we're going to drop the presentation link there. And today we'll be talking about the third part of the series of PBIS implementation for foundations in Tier 1, which is data analysis and discipline procedures. So, ladies, thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Christy. Again, my name is Lauren Kowalski with Florida PBIS, and we are going to go ahead and get started on our final TA chat today for our Tier 1 coaching series. So just to kind of get everyone settled and kind of warmed up for today's chat on a scale of teacher today, how are you? How are you so far in your teacher world? And if you want to, when you kind of comment what number you are, if you can even just share your role within your school, if you're admin, a district coordinator, teacher. So how are you teachering today and feeling? And Sabrina, I feel like we should give bonus points if somebody knows who some of these more obscure teachers are.
Absolutely. You know your films or movies or TV shows.
So go ahead, just you can put your number in the chat. I want to say that I'm always feeling four, um, but that would not be true. I would love to always be Janine. And then I don't know if Sabrina or Christy, if you can kind of see
Yes.
where some people are and how they're feeling. I can't see the
Y-
chat.
Yes, I see a number 5, Aaron, a Miss Frizzle with Magic School Bus number 2, and and then I also see a number 3. They say because they've been all over the place today, and another 2, Every Day's an Adventure, and then we've got a number 1 there.
Anyone who's shared their role and what they do at their school or at their district?
I'm
Just so
not
we
seeing that just yet. But
okay.
we do have
If you
another
have
number 8 and a number 2 in terms of how they're feeling today.
okay. If you do have a moment as you're kind of just checking in, just to let us know, it kind of helps us tailor some things as we go through our discussion to know who's in our audience today.
Well, so far there's Christina, who is a Greek teacher, and we also have another Marie, who is a resource teacher, so another
Okay,
educator.
awesome.
And we also have Rebecca, who is a PBAS DC from Santa Rosa. Thank you guys all for joining us and for sharing in our chat.
All right. So just go ahead and keep posting those. We'll kind of keep an eye on them so that we know who we have with us today. So again, just to restate, this is part 3 of our Tier 1 coaching series that we've presented throughout this year. So if you were not able to join us for part 1 or part 2, we always have those recorded and available on our website. So you could always jump back in, watch those recordings. We are going to tie in a little bit today of the previous series topics just to bring it all together since this is our final one. So we did go through teaming and attendance integration back in September. We went through faculty commitment and lesson planning in January. And then today we are going to be using data to support implementation of disciplinary procedures, which is, the topic everybody wants to talk about at 2:30 on a Tuesday, right? Data analysis and discipline. But it is also that time of the year where we see those behaviors really start to ramp up, and we want to be able to kind of target those behaviors, really help end out the year strong and make some tweaks to our PBIS system if we need to, especially before testing season comes in. So our objectives for today, we're going to kind of walk through how we can be using our discipline data effectively, specifically within that Tier 1 PBIS team. We do hear from a lot of teams that especially as the year goes on, we're so rushed, right? We're so pressed for time. There's so much going on that we kind of step away from the problem solving part of our Tier 1 team, and we're just trying to get things done. We're trying to plan the next activity, prep for the walkthrough, get ready for evaluation pieces that need to be turned in, and we lose a little bit of focus on really keeping the data and the problem solving at the heart of the tier one work. So we are going to kind of walk through how we can do that effectively in our team meetings. Then we're going to hope that we can strengthen those discipline systems by not only analyzing the data, but then using that to make sure we have clear definitions, we are consistently documenting and making sure that our decision rules are aligned with what we see happening at our school. We will touch again back on the integration of attendance and instruction to kind of wrap up both pieces of our TA chat series this year. And then, of course, planning for some next steps and how we can implement. So just as a reminder, all of our Tier 1 PBIS 10 critical elements have been highlighted. Oops, sorry, too fast. Have been highlighted throughout the previous chats. So the last two that we're going to talk about today are data entry and analysis, and then effective procedures for discipline. So we will have gone through all 10 elements with these chats. So jumping right into the data piece. It does all start with data. And when we use data as a tier one team, we do have two different types of data that we're looking at. So we have our annual evaluation data, which is going to be showing us our historical trends. These are things that you're starting to prep for if you are a PBIS coach or you are reviewing if you are a district coordinator. If you are a classroom teacher or support on a tier one team, you may or may not have even seen some of this data yet, but hopefully you will, if you're part of the team, be participating in completing the evaluations that your school is going to do at the end of the year. So these are our things like our benchmarks of quality, our outcome data summaries. We might be looking at attendance data, climate survey data. So that's the annual piece that we could be looking at. What we're going to really focus on for this chat is what your teams could be doing monthly and the monthly database decision making that should be happening at your school site teams. And not only just with your tier one PBIS team, but this could be some work that's even extended to include your faculty and other stakeholders, especially throughout the year and depending on the different discipline behaviors that you're seeing and popping up and that you're dealing with at your school. So just to review back from our first chat in September, we kind of went through what the team meetings could and should look like, and we discussed some different questions that can help determine the effectiveness of your PBIS team. The one that we're really going to focus on today is that question number 3. Is your team reviewing monthly data and problem solving monthly? So I want to just pause here for a second, again, give you an opportunity to kind of either unmute yourself and chime in, or please feel free to type in the chat. I do have some questions for you later that I would love for you to unmute for. So if that will make you feel comfortable to start doing that now, please feel free. But let's just kind of have an open discussion about monthly data. Is it something your team is looking at? Is it something that if you are a classroom teacher, you've seen throughout the year so far this year? Has data been getting shared? Have you been invited to problem solve, or are you doing problem solving? So let's just do a quick check-in right now. How is this going at your school, or are you doing it? And it's okay if you say no, right? We can grow from it if we own it. And then Sabrina, again, I'm going to rely on you to kind of help me see what pops up in the chat.
Nothing in the chat yet, Lauren. I'm sure folks are furiously typing.
Yes.
Typing away.
Thinking and typing. So far, Marie says that yes, they do share data monthly. It's awesome.
And then this will be a question on the walkthroughs that come up too, if your school is prepping for your walkthroughs.
And Tisha shared that they do share data monthly through their PLCs.
Okay. I know sometimes what happens too is school teams start off the school year really well sharing data. And then again, by this time of the year, it becomes more difficult or not as consistent of a practice.
Yes. And Rebecca says that, yes, they share monthly at their monthly PBIS meeting. And uh, I hope I don't butcher your name, Nathacha,
Mhm.
uh, says that they share data monthly through their PBIS team as well. So that's wonderful. Thank
Awesome.
you guys for
Yeah,
sharing.
this is great. So your teams are already sharing the data consistently. So let's really look at that problem solving piece as we work through today's chat. So just a quick reminder of what we often refer to as like the big five that we would call them when you're looking for your monthly data. We say big five, although there are six listed here because it really kind of depends on what your school and district kind of chooses to highlight. Some teams may even select, 7 or 8 different pieces of data that they pull monthly. But the main things we really want to be sure to include are always our referral counts. So per day, per month. Then we're going to be looking at referrals by problem behavior, right? This is the skills that PBIS is going to need to focus on. The location, right? Where are these behaviors happening? Time of day, right? When do we need to be targeting our instruction and our response? Then something that's often overlooked by teams is the referrals by disciplinary response, right? What is happening in response to the referral? So, what are the often terms consequences that are applied or the corrective actions that are applied? So, those are kind of our top five. And then that last one, referrals by student and staff. These become a little more school-based and team-based decisions. Some teams prefer to not look at student and staff data by name. That's just a school or district policy or preference. Other teams save that for like more of tier two work. In today's example, we're actually going to be looking at it by grade level because we're just kind of using a sample school. So again, the types of data that you pick and the way that you look at it could change a little bit based on your school needs, but at least getting some of these main ones in is always a key for each month. Then a reminder of the 4-step problem solving process, right? We're always going to be wondering what is the problem? That's step one. And then we want to know why it is occurring. Then, of course, what are we going to do about it? And then how are we going to know if our strategies are working? So what we've done today is kind of pulled out the guiding questions for the problem solving process, and we're going to walk through how these can happen more effectively throughout your team meetings. So we're going to go through each of the guiding questions matched up with a sample agenda after we've also looked at some, kind of sample school-based data. So the first thing that we want to do is figure out what is the problem. Ideally, your monthly data is going to be sent out prior to the meeting. And again, this is sometimes where teams kind of lose the best practice and then their team meeting time gets eaten up by looking at the data as opposed to coming to the table ready to discuss the data. So then the meeting gets very rushed because you haven't really been able to problem solve or talk about what the next events are or things going on that need to be planned for. And then the actual real work of problem solving kind of gets pushed to the side. So really making sure that the data is sent out in advance will help your team meetings run smoothly. Making sure that the person who is assigned on your team that can access the data, oftentimes these might be an administrator or a district personnel that pulls it for you, right? Know in advance when your meetings are so that they can send it well ahead of time. Obviously, for today's chat, I wasn't able to send you guys data in advance, so we're going to take a quick walk through some sample data right now, and then we'll jump back into this slide to see how we can follow our team meeting agenda to really work the problem solving steps. So this is just our like Sunshine Elementary School. It's actually a K-8 school, not an elementary school. And we've just made some simple charts to kind of review their data. So first we pulled referrals by grade. So this is just a total count of referrals so far this year by each grade level. So if I were looking at this data, I'd be analyzing it prior to the meeting and just kind of having some wonderings and thinkings of what's jumping out to me. So obviously, 7th and 8th grade, we see have the highest numbers of referrals, which if any of you have taught 7th or 8th grade, this would not be very surprising to you. I am a former 7th grade teacher, and it does not shock me that they would have the highest number of referrals. And I also have taught fifth grade before, and it does not surprise me that they have a high count of referrals. So now we don't want to just look at the data to see, like, oh, what are the highest numbers? Really trying to step back and think, what are we noticing? What are some trends? What are some wonderings? I see where fifth grade's really high, but sixth grade is really low. As a tier one team, this could be a conversation that we might have of what are those sixth grade teachers doing? Is there something happening in the sixth grade classrooms? Are there certain teachers there? Are there strategies that they're implementing that could be helpful, right, to the fifth grade team? Could we maybe have some opportunities for mentoring with some of the sixth graders who are showing really great model behavior with some of the fifth graders, right? Hey, like you're soon to be on the middle school side, maybe some mentoring programs that could happen. Then we're going to look at our referrals by location. So again, just kind of taking some analysis of it, kind of looking at it. What jumps out to me, of course, right? We see the classroom, obviously the highest number of referrals. That triggers to me as a PBIS team member, right? If we see that more than 50% of our referrals are coming from the classroom, then that is a very strong indicator that we have a tier one classroom school-wide implementation problem, right? So this is something that we want to problem solve as a school-based team, right? This indicator of tier one fidelity not really being met within the classroom instruction. So let's go ahead and take a minute and look at the referrals by time. Please, again, feel free to unmute yourself for these next couple of slides. It'd be great to have just a little discussion. If you're looking at this data, what is something that kind of jumps out to you?
Feel free to also type it into the chat. Yes, Rebecca points out the time of day spikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything interesting about those time of day spikes that anybody notices?
It seems like the 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
seemed like, and I'm wondering if, like for elementary level, it seemed like right before lunchtime when they're getting antsy. But if that
Mm-hmm.
was middle school, I wonder is that when we're doing a bell change, in between that
Right.
time, and then 2 o'clock again for elementary brain, I would say that's almost close to dismissal. They're winding down, they're getting restless, and it's probably, and I joke, it's probably a subject that they're not really interested in. So that's when that
Yep.
time spikes.
Mhm. And that too, like you'd see that in the middle school world as well.
Hmm.
Mhm. Thank you so much for jumping in. Sabrina, did anyone else comment anything in the chat?
Yes. Andrea points out about the afternoon spikes. It looks like 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And then also usually at the end of the school day, Natasha points out that that might be an issue of some, it's just something going on at the end of the school day.
Right, right. And again, we don't have the master schedule for this made up school, but that would be, probably the first place that a team would look, all right? Like what's happening during these times. So now let's look at the referrals by offense type. So again, take a minute to kind of look at it, think about the slides we've already looked at. Feel free to unmute or type in the chat. What are some things that jump out to you that you'd bring to your tier one team meeting to discuss?
Non-compliance, Tisha points out non-compliance having the cross-school level expectations for the students.
Mhm. And thinking about the earlier slides that we saw, right? Knowing that the classroom has the most number of referrals, right? not surprised that the noncompliance is one of the most common offense types. Anything else that jumps out to anybody or that you notice and would question or wonder about?
I wonder about the description types and how some of them are pretty similar or could reflect similar behaviors.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that actually Sabrina is going to touch on later on in the chat, right? Making sure that, when we look at these types of charts, we could see, right, these, questions that Betsy shared. Do we need to kind of get on the same page? And then Sabrina, anything else that was mentioned?
Yes, and actually that's spot on. Rebecca has a great follow-up question. What is other, right?
Yeah, I was hoping someone was going to say that. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, what is other? And 189 of them, right? That's a lot of clarifying that might need to happen for this team. Anything else, Sabrina, or was that the kind of the last one?
That might also indicate, Lauren, it might be an indication to the team that there's some coaching that needs to happen around writing referrals so that you're
Mm-hmm.
getting good data in so that you can problem solve appropriately.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Having consistency and capturing what is meant by it, by those definitions,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Right. And knowing that this is a K through 8 school, right? Not surprised at the inappropriate hands and feet, right? Those are common referrals that we see not only from like our K and 1 friends, but also from our 7th and 8th grade friends, right? They get a little inappropriate touching going on at both ends of the spectrum for that. So we might need to kind of even, define what's going on within those types of categories. And that's where Sabrina's going to walk us through a little later of making sure that everyone has a clear understanding of what the offenses are. And then the last one is by response. So again, for the last time, and don't be afraid to unmute or jump in. What are you noticing or seeing? What might you question or want to discuss further with your Tier 1 team to problem solve?
Not seeing any responses yet.
That's okay. The first question that I have looking at this data is, are multiple responses allowed to be input on one referral? Because like the parent contact is so high, right? I wonder if that's getting paired with some of these additional consequences.
Yes, lots of parent contact.
Mm-hmm. And then I also would wonder and want to talk about with my Tier 1 team, what does parent contact look like at our school?
Mhm.
Is it a phone call? Do you have to actually get a hold of somebody? Is this just leaving a message? Um, does it seem like it's an effective response? Because we still see our referrals increasing. Um, and even who is making the parent contact. So
Mhm.
I think those would be some questions that I would have. And then my next wondering is, what types of offenses are incurring that ISS, right? So we saw some of our highest referrals were things like non-compliance, inappropriate hands and feet, or the disrespect. Yet one of our top responses is in-school suspension. So just really making sure that we're, matching the responses to the offenses that we see. And again, that's something Sabrina is going to walk us through in a few minutes of, do we have those decision rules in place? Do we have a clear discipline flow chart? Is it fitting the needs of our school and what we're seeing happening on our school campus? So once we've looked through the data, and again, you're going to bring this with you to the meeting, you'd be able to start right here at this point with your team of what is the problem. So we might want to talk about those ideas of, we see 7th and 8th graders are having a lot of trouble around 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the classroom. it turns out that that tends to be when the bulk of our on-level students are taking that pre-algebra and Algebra 1 class, right? So maybe these are struggling students with math in particular. Now they're in a math class that is at a little bit of a higher level, trying to prep them for high school. It's late in the day. What could we do to kind of help support the teachers in these classrooms, getting less of that non-compliance from the students? Or maybe, like we had shared, maybe it's the elementary school kiddos that are having trouble at 10 a.m. We see that inappropriate contact. They're getting restless. Maybe they're not having a break in the morning. They're getting ready for lunch. What is the problem? These are just some sample problems that teams might come up with, right? The majority of referrals are given to seventh grade students for being tardy to their first period class. Eighth grade students engaging in disruptive hands-on behavior. Lunchroom referrals are being written by the cafeteria staff for sixth graders. What are some examples from your campus? What are you seeing on your campuses right now? I know a lot of you have said you're sharing the data consistently. So what are some things that you're seeing? So again, feel free to either unmute or just type it quickly in the chat. What are some problems that you're seeing in your campuses?
Horseplay.
That was one we covered at our last chat. We used that as an example.
Yeah. And just this time of year, right?
It
It's
is the time of
February.
year. So then even drilling that down, what grade levels are you seeing it? Is it primarily boys versus girls? Certain time of day that your team could really dig into to help problem solve? Any other things popping up on your campuses?
No additional shares at this time.
Okay. So I do feel like a lot of teams, especially at this point of the year, it's that disrespect, defiance, and some of those like insubordination types of behaviors that we see. The kids are just kind of starting to burn out a little bit. Then we want to identify why is it happening, right? So we've identified what the problem is. Next step right there in our agenda would be why is it happening? So we identified some things earlier. Maybe we need to pull out the master schedule and really dig into who's in what classes. Maybe we want to look at those other category referrals, right? Do we need some more training, right? Is it happening because the teachers are unclear as to what some of the categories are? Is it a commonly occurring because there's just kind of been a push for some more test prep work, and we've lost a little bit of the engagement within the classrooms and the classroom instruction. So that's a conversation your tier one team could have right there in the moment to try to identify why we think the problem's occurring. From there, we can move right on to the next step. And again, this can all be done within about 15, 20 minutes in your regular monthly team meeting. What can we do about it, right? What are we going to do about it? Again, we noticed that those seventh graders having trouble at 2 o'clock in those higher math classes where they're kids who are struggling with the skills. Maybe we're going to reach out to some district coaches for math. Maybe we want to increase some of the manipulatives and the hands-on activities that those math teachers are doing. Maybe as an admin team or a coaching team of PBIS, we're going to just kind of push in and try to help pull some small groups to get some of those basic skills reviewed in those math classes. So whatever could happen that could help try to solve the problem or create a potential intervention, not only for those students, but even potentially for that grade level. One of the examples, right, the seventh graders were late to their first period class. They determined why they were late is because they were socializing, right? They're seventh graders, right? They want to be talking to their friends. That's their first opportunity in the morning that they're seeing their friends. So they've decided to implement a new tardy policy for the middle school students to get them to class on time, and really modeling that on-time behavior to kind of have that school-wide intervention for it. then how do we know if it works? Well, as a team, we're also going to decide by next meeting, we want to be able to look at our referrals for either noncompliance or tardiness and hopefully see, maybe a 10% reduction in those referrals. Or you could choose some kind of evaluative goal to really monitor the fidelity of the steps that you guys have taken. So before we kind of close out on the problem solving piece and the data analysis, just two things to kind of think about. Is your team currently kind of following the four-step problem solving process during your meeting? So I know a lot of you shared, yes, we are looking at data. Are you going through the four-step problem solving process and really solving, really talking about what's going on? Or if your team is not, what are some barriers to being able to do that? So you would answer question one or question one. You can pick whichever question one you would like. Just quick in the chat, like, yes, we're doing it, or no, it's, really having trouble finding the time, or, we don't have consistent attendance at our team meetings. What are some of the barriers?
So Evelise has shared that yes, they are, but time is a concern. It's a potential barrier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really following that agenda could help, keep it quick as you work through. And then, of course, the sharing the data in advance and having your team members come prepared really helps as well.
And let's see, Marie says that she's a new PBIS facilitator and didn't know about the steps.
I'm so glad you joined us today. And that is something that we hear a lot from teams. They don't think that the PBIS team should be going through this each month. So it's great that we can share that awareness with you.
And Andrea shares that they do have an issue with finding time, that it's a challenge sometimes to find the time.
I know, it's everything in education is so hard to find the time for sure. So I just want to thank you all so much for participating. And now what we're going to do is take what we've looked at for all of those pieces and really look at our discipline system and how we can take this data analysis a step further to really look at the procedures we have going on in our campus. So Sabrina's going to kind of take over from here and we'll swap roles.
Okay. So we're going to take a closer look at effective procedures for discipline. And one of the things I'd like to draw your attention to is the use of referral forms and tracking documents. They really should include information that is useful in decision making. And that includes things like, of course, identifying the student by name, but also looking at the date and time of the incidents, the grade levels, because again, through Lauren's examples, we could kind of see the importance of that for us to be able to review and look for trends and patterns and ultimately hopefully be able to make good decisions just based on the information that we're able to glean from it. Again, even looking at referring staff, because it could be that staff may need some additional supports at some point, and also identifying the problem behavior itself so that we can take a deeper dive into that as well. And then, of course, some basic information like where are things happening, looking at the location of the incident, and then also being able to look at the administrative decisions around those incidents as well. It's often helpful if we can start to be able to target the motivation. Often the motivation is not something that's captured on our referral forms, but it could be really helpful to be able to make decisions, to do reteaches and support students in terms of how they can maybe access that particular thing that they value in a way that's more socially appropriate. However, we do understand that in order to ask staff to identify potential motivators, they have to have a clear understanding of the motivation of students and or experiences. And so additional training and professional learning is often required around this skill. So we don't often see those on all referral forms, but they can be really helpful in terms of the data that you're gathering, the information to be able to make decisions regarding your discipline system over time. And so along those lines, we also just want to look at it in terms of the whole process. And it's very important that we identify those behaviors, but also define the behaviors that we're seeing and that staff are to identify, because it's really important that we have continuity and an understanding of these behaviors. So as you're building or refining your system, it's important to accurately capture discipline data. So a part of the system includes identifying and defining those behaviors, and we also want to look at them in terms of severity. On this particular document, they've defined them as mild, moderate, and severe. And then they've given some examples of the types of behaviors that might fit in that category. We tend to see more broader categories like classroom managed or minor infractions, or office managed or major infractions in terms of documentation. And it's helpful for us to be able to, again, document and track the occurrences of these incidents. Often it is necessary to further define the specific behaviors identified so that we can make sure that we're comparing apples and apples and oranges and oranges. Having those clear definitions increases the likelihood that we're going to be able to have consistency across staff, across different settings and all of the environments on campuses. And it also can be helpful in terms of where we're capturing that information. If they're using a particular platform that's used district-wide, or a database or an application that hopefully is helping us to gather that information and will provide access to it as needed over time, so that we can frequently review the data that's entered and help to determine what our needs are. So there should also be staff professional learning around this to increase consistency among staff in identifying those behaviors, and especially when it comes to again, discerning what can be managed in the classroom, what's reasonable to be managed in the classroom versus the major office discipline referrals, which may be tied to more severe behaviors and often are tied to the student code of conduct. So let's do just a quick check-in. I'm going to ask you to use your reaction buttons. And does your current system both identify and define the behaviors that are being documented or tracked? So just a thumbs up, thumbs down using your reaction buttons. Great. Great. That's great to see. Awesome. Ooh, I love that one. Okay. That is great feedback for us. Okay, thank you guys for participating in our quick check-in. And so again, and if you're still, building your system or defining it, again, it is a process, and it's something that you, again, want to consistently review your data and make adjustments, as needed. So when we look at our evaluative tool, the benchmarks of quality, it kind of guides us in terms of how we should share information regarding our discipline system. And discipline flowcharts are a way for us to provide a graphic that can guide our process for our staff. You can also provide additional narratives as well when it comes to, again, sharing the system with staff. This is an example of a high school campus and the guidance that they're providing for both identifying and managing discipline on their campus. It has clear prompts to guide decision making. And what we'll often see is that we've got some columns, typically the less severe behavior or the minor infractions are labeled on the left, and then on the right we have our more severe or the major infractions that are defined or identified and defined on the right. And so they typically will give some specific examples of the types of behaviors that might align with it being either minor or major. And then we also, of course, want to identify the behaviors that here they're listed as emergency type of behaviors. You may also hear them referred to as like a crisis situation. So we want to make sure that we kind of capture the continuum on the flow charts. Another feature of this one is they included some of their decision rules. So in this case, there's a decision rule that stated that if a behavior, the same behavior occurred at 3 times, okay, if it occurred at least 3 times, then that might be something that is considered more persistent. And even though it's a minor infraction, it could still result in an office discipline referral because, again, because it's repetitive. And so we do encourage you within your system to, as a campus, decide what are those decision rules that make sense. We don't want to overwhelm our system, but we also want to make sure that we've provided enough guidance that we can have consistency within our system. So this is another example where the district provided a discipline flow chart for minor and major infractions. In this case, they provided it, but they also allow customization. So campuses can look at their individual data and make adjustments to it based on the behaviors that they are observing. And again, in this case, they provided prompts as to what the next step should be if a behavior is repeated. They here provide guidance as to if the first time it's observed, then you provide a verbal warning. And then the second time it's observed and so forth, you provide reminders. And then here, if the same behavior occurs 4 times, then it would then potentially result in an office discipline referral. Again, this is 4 times within a specific period of time. It would be documented as a major infraction. So again, this is helpful as being a part of the onboarding system, both for new staff, but also for new students. And it's also important that our families have a good understanding of what our discipline system consists of, so that they understand that even though the student didn't necessarily receive an office discipline referral, if they're engaged in a behavior at 4 times or more, then it would result in office discipline referral. And we want to, again, be as preventative as possible. So we want to act on this sooner rather than later. And it's important, again, to have families on board as well, and also to make sure students have a really clear understanding of our discipline system and providing opportunities for them to turn things around. And so this is an example of a discipline flow chart. It's a great example where they have integrated other initiatives that are used kind of in tandem with their system. It's not that they needed something completely separate. They also have great reminder boxes, which serve as prompts also for staff. And there's one that is specific that I think just says it all. We are all human. We all need reminders, right? So that's for the students and the adults, right? And so just kind of keeping that in mind too, but also knowing that here it's color coded. What's in blue serves as prompts or reminders for staff, but they also don't just leave it at that. They provide professional learning and training on an ongoing basis so that they can have consistent implementation by staff, because we don't want to ever assume that staff knows what we mean by it. We want to offer the training so that we can hopefully get the outcomes that we're looking for both students and staff. They do a great job of communicating to the student that they're giving them the positive feedback feedback when they're able to disengage in that problem behavior and get back on track. They're receiving that feedback, and so it really does communicate that that the students and teachers are able to problem solve and work through it together. And again, when we talk about attendance, attendance is an area where there's been a lot of focus. We're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, but the overall question of how do we know if what we have in place is working? We need to really be able to review our data in order to determine if what we have in place is actually working. So just as Lauren mentioned, we have a lot of data. We often collect a lot of data, but it's also really important to use it. So that means reviewing it, analyzing it, sharing it to increase awareness for our staff, and also to be able to reflect on how effective our current practices are and whether we need to make adjustments as needed. So again, we should have those clear expectations and rules and routines, and we've taught them. That's a part of our system. We're providing acknowledgement, but we also, again, want to make sure that we're building a system that is based on both prevention and instruction. So now, again, we have an opportunity for you to give us a little bit of feedback. So data should drive ongoing planning. How will you know if what you're doing is working? How do you know if what you're doing is effective, if you're implementing PBIS effectively? Please feel free to type into the chat. And then if Lauren and Chris or Christy could share the share outs.
So we've got that we'll see a decrease in discipline referrals, and then of course the academic gains increase as well.
Yes, awesome. Yes, they can go hand in hand, right? Because they're accessing more instruction, right? If they're in the classroom, they're there for the learning.
That's all I see so far.
Okay.
Oh, and then stronger relationships between students and teachers.
Yes, and that's where it all begins, right? Having those connections, and that's going to tie in nicely too as we segue into talking about just some of the other considerations as we do a recap of our series, our Tier 1 series. Perfect timing. So, as we talk about, again, the series as a whole, we initially focused on attendance. Again, that's something that I think is on everyone's radar. We really, you can have the best plan, the best system in the world, but if kids aren't there to access it, you know, we've got to do what's needed in order to get them there, right? And the other thing about that is really just encouraging us to look at it systematically, not doing things separately, right? And again, when we even look at lesson planning and just overall data analysis and discipline procedures, all of this goes hand in hand in terms of us building our supports. So when we look at attendance, you know, some of the key questions, of course, that we have to ask are just related to why are kids not in our building, right? So we're going to touch on that in just a bit. And then again, tying in more of, again, having those lesson plans that are meeting the needs of our students, but also to help increase faculty commitment, making sure we're doing those direct teaches of the things that our students need. And then again, how do we know that we're doing these things? We've got to frequently review our data. So again, in terms of the issue of concern being attendance, we want to encourage everyone to look at attendance within our system. If we can reduce, chronic absences, that means that we're able to get kids into the building, addressing a lot of the potential barriers related to health and wellness and lack of access to services, thinking about the hierarchy of needs, food and housing insecurities. All of these things can play a role in students and families, really, they could be also experiencing all of these things and having a lack of transportation. All of these could limit our student and family engagement, and looking at ways that we can identify the problems early and possibly put some things in place to address those things in a timely manner. So for that reason, we really do want to stress it's important to look at our data frequently and on an ongoing basis, and not just looking at it in terms of our annual review of data. And so specific to attendance, if we can integrate it in, we can partner with our staff, families, and students to get their perspective on attendance. Again, looking at the 10 critical elements that we're addressing through PBIS, and really helping to support our students getting to our buildings by even including attendance within our overall expectations, within our recognition system. It doesn't need to be something completely separate. And then, of course, regularly reviewing it with staff. Again, sharing the successes, but then also being able to identify the needs as well. And then again, when we look at working smarter and not harder, we really want to encourage blended teams to focus on behavior and attendance together. And so this is a great example of the lesson plan that Lauren and Christy shared in our last TA session for Tier 1, where we looked at lesson plans based on data and really targeting the behaviors of concern, looking at data that was collected, analyzed, and reviewed, and then targeting the very specific skills that were needed based on what students were doing well or where they were struggling. And again, we must look at our data regularly in order to be able to address the needs, really using our data. And again, data can help us to answer very specific questions. They can inform our instructional practices. We're able to identify whether 80% of our students are meeting our expected levels of performance, or if there are subgroups within our students that are not meeting the expectations. It allows us to make adjustments in real time. So it's important that we are looking at it regularly. And today we're going to end our session with an activity that's called an intentional close. And this specific intentional close is called My Next Step. So you'll have about a minute to just take a look at the potential next steps that you can take. And it's all about connecting with a colleague, or connecting with literature. Is there something additional that you'd like to read, or dive deeper into the research, or ask an expert? That expert could also just be on your campus or within your district. But I'll give you just a moment to take a look and think about what your next step might be. And then, of course, after you take a moment, we're going to ask you to type it into the chat.
Got some good processing time here, Sabrina.
We love that, and we will give them processing time.
So
I
we
love
have
it.
one
Connect
next.
with a
Oh,
colleague.
mhm.
I love that question of who will be your accountability buddy or your accountability partner, right? You can hold each other accountable and support and all the things.
So we have another one here about disseminating information.
Great. Yes, don't keep
Mhm.
all the great info to yourself. Share it out. Share it with your team. Share it with your administrators.
We
Yeah,
have connecting with our district liaison.
wonderful.
Oh, they're coming in faster now. My next
Okay.
step will be to read more. I'm going to work with our school psychologist and go through a book
Okay,
study. And
great.
then my next step will be to develop an additional discipline flow chart template for our teams to adapt if they'd like.
Love
And a
it.
shout out again for the FCA example.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your attendance and active participation. Are there any other questions that are lingering that we can help with?
And then there is a quick survey for you there if you don't mind going ahead and just kind of quickly filling that out before you hop off today and we wrap up. And then, of course, we have our friendly bear after you finish the chat.